Good morning. I'm going to show you how to make cheesecake today, since some of you have requested me to put up a video over the break. A lot of people think cheesecake is really difficult to make, but it's not. So I'm going to show you a few tips this morning to make it easy and help you to make a successful and delicious dessert. Graham cracker crust is something that you use for a lot of desserts. For this dessert, I'm going to use 2 packages of graham crackers that I already have in this bag. I also have already put in the 3 tablespoons of sugar just to make that easier to mix together. I have my stick of butter already pre-melted, and I have my rolling pin here, which is how I am going to make these into crumbs. And you can use any type of cookie for your crust. If you use Oreo cookies or Nutter Butters or anything like that, then you can skip the butter because those other cookies already have a lot of oil and things in them to help it stick together. It's also very important to note that you should start out with a clean kitchen. I have already cleaned off all my counters. It is not the same thing as uncluttered. I definitely still have a lot of clutter in my kitchen, but it is all sanitized and clean and ready to go. It only takes a couple of minutes to pound and roll those crackers into fine crumbs, and then you're ready to add the butter, and the bag keeps it all, the mess all nicely contained for you. While it was in the bag, I put my butter in there with the crackers, and then I kneaded it all together until it was nicely mixed and all of the crackers are moist and the butter has been absorbed. This is my spring-form cheesecake pan. You do not have to have a cheesecake pan in order to make cheesecake, but it makes it much easier to get the cheesecake out of the pan. That's the main advantage of having this. It has this neat spring thing on the side where you could just open this outside part up and it comes away from that, the bottom. You can use any other type of metal shaped pan. It will just be a little bit more difficult to get the cheesecake out of it. So then you put your cracker mix into your pan. Make sure you get all of it out. And then you're going to spread it around and pat it down really nice and evenly in the bottom of the pan. It can go up around the sides. And you can use other things to help press it down, also make it nice and even. I like to have a good thick crust on my cheesecake. If the crust is not your favorite part, you could get away with cutting that recipe in half and not having it go as far up on the sides. The crust has to be baked for 10 minutes in a 350-degree oven. So I have my oven preheated. And if you are baking, you should always have your parents help you with this part. So putting that in there in the center. And then I'll put my timer on for 10 minutes. Now I'm ready to start the filling. So I've got a cup of sugar and I have a tablespoon of cornstarch that I'm going to whisk together here because you want the cornstarch mixed evenly throughout the filling. You don't want any clumps of that in one section. So we'll have that ready to add to the cream cheese here in a moment. So I have already put my 3 packages of cream cheese into the mixer. It is helpful if those are room temperature because it's easier to mix it that way. And this is really the most important step in the cheesecake filling because you do not want to have chunks or clumps of cream cheese. It's got to be evenly mixed throughout. As it gets smoother and creamier, you want to scrape down the sides, make sure that there are no chunks left in there, and mix it a few more times until it appears nice and smooth. Scraped off my bowl multiple times and my cream cheese looks very smooth with no lumps. So now I can begin to add my other ingredients. The recipe I'm using today calls for 4 eggs. I like to use the cage-free eggs because chickens are omnivores, and if they can get their grass and their grasshoppers, they are much healthier, and the free-range or cage-free eggs tend to bake more evenly. As I learned when I was in Russia, you should always open your eggs in a separate container just in case you get one that is not fresh or one that you want to use. This one looks good, so I'm going to add it in, and you're going to add the eggs one at a time. I'll need to scrape out this bowl and make sure I get all of my yolk and white in there. And then one at a time you mix it just until it's blended, and then you add the next egg. Cream, and this actually is a 2/3 a cup measuring cup. I have a set that has a whole bunch of different fractions of a cup that you can use. Most sets only have a 1/3, so you would have to use a 1/3 plus one more third to equal 2/3. In the same step with the sour cream goes the whipping cream. I have already poured it into this liquid measuring cup. These liquid measuring cups are nice because they have a line on there to show you where you want it to be filled to, but then you don't have to worry about it spilling over the sides like you do with the normal measuring cup. And then we'll mix that again. While that's going, I'm going to add my 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. This vanilla extract is a very strong flavoring. I like a lot of vanilla, so I'm going to put a little more than 1.5 teaspoons in there. The next thing I'm going to do is add my lime juice. This is another liquid measuring cup that has the 1/2 cup measure on it, so I'll know exactly when I have enough. This is a lemon or lime squeezer. This is also another type of lemon or lime squeezer. You can use either one, or you can just squeeze it with your hands. With limes, there's no seeds to worry about, so they're pretty easy to juice. Take your time and make sure you've gotten all the juice out of there that you can. And it will take a few limes to get enough. It took me 7 limes to get a 1/2 cup of juice. So now I'm going to add that in here and mix that up. Now I'm going to take this nice mixture and pour it into the pan. You're supposed to try and get the bubbles out so that you won't have bubbles in your cheesecake. You can see the little craters that the bubbles are making as the air pockets come to the surface. You do that a few times and try and get the air bubbles out. And then you can pour it in to the pan, which has cooled off by now after pre-baking the crust. And then I will scrape out the sides of the pan. Now comes the really interesting science-y part of this. If you're using a spring-formed cheesecake pan, you need to put tinfoil around it like this so that the water won't get inside the pan. If you're using another type, a solid type of pan, you don't need the tinfoil because it's all one piece. But this is two different pieces and the water can get through it. You have to put your cheesecake in a water bath if you want it to come out looking absolutely pristine and perfect. It's not necessary to do this, but it does make a big difference in presentation, and then the edge or crust around the outside of the cheesecake won't be brown and harder than the rest of it. The reason is because the water boils at 212 degrees, and the boiling water keeps it from getting hotter than 212, so it heats evenly all the way through. I can't show you putting this into the oven because I'm going to need 2 hands for that. Now my cheesecake is in the oven. The temperature has been reduced to 325 degrees. So after the cheesecake was chilled in the refrigerator overnight, cold makes things contract. So you can see that it has pulled away from the sides of the pan by itself. Heat makes things expand. So as it cooled, it shrunk just a tiny bit, which makes it a little easier to take off the outer ring of the spring foiled cheesecake pan. So I just use this over here, and that just comes right off. So you can see that it is nice and even. That is the benefit of using a special cheesecake pan. Now I'm going to make a topping for it, and this topping can be almost a dessert by itself. You use whipping cream or Cool Whip and a package of Jell-O. If you use whipping cream, you've got to dissolve the Jell-O first in some hot water and then put both the Jell-O mixture and the whipping cream in the bowl and whip it. If you use Cool Whip, you can just pour the Jell-O right into the package of Cool Whip and stir it up, and it makes a kind of mousse-like topping, or you can even make a dessert by itself with that, putting it into a clear glass with fruit and letting it chill that way. It makes it really fancy. So here I am pouring my dissolved Jell-O into the whipping cream. You do not want to scrape the sides of the Jell-O container because that is typically more undissolved gelatin that is kind of gooey, and you don't want that in there. So it's okay if you don't get the whole thing. Now I'm using an icing bag with a metal tip here to make decorations on the top of the cheesecake. Okay, the next step is to grate some of the zest of the lime onto the top of the cheesecake for added decoration, kind of like sprinkles. Zest is part of the peel that has the color on it. I have washed all of my limes before using them. The best thing to wash them with is vinegar, because you don't want to be ingesting any soap residue. But you should always wash your fruits and vegetables before eating or using. Smells really good when you're doing this. And then you can see the sprinkles of lime zest over the top. So then here is the finished cheesecake. decorated with alternating raspberries and limes. And then with your leftover Cool Whip or whipping cream, you can make a dessert for people who don't like cheesecake that is more like a mousse, and put some fruit in it and garnish it with another piece of lime on the top. And enjoy! This is a much simpler recipe that I sometimes use. It's from Wilton, and it is a good one to use if you are just starting out baking cheesecake for the first time.